And this is Pastor Tim from Bend and Lowita United Methodist Churches, circuit of small churches in Central Texas, remaining United Methodist. We're inviting you to discover the history of the church through the stories. Many times our family histories are through stories. We hear stories that shape us, and the Bible stories are the same way. They shape who we are and how we think of ourselves and how we work and think in the world. So we're talking about Samuel and as a priest, high priest, and picking King Saul, who was turns out to be crazy. He had the good looks. He would have made a great politician on television, but he was just not a very good leader. And he had sessions of mental health problems when they didn't know how to deal with that. But God tells Samuel that it's time to pick a new leader. And Samuel doesn't want to do that because he had an investment in Saul. He's the one who picked Saul. He's the one who anointed him. He's the one who tried to support him. But now it's not going to work out. It's not going to be good for the nation. And it's not going to be good for the faith. And so now it's time to pick a new king. So David is a child. He's one of several brothers who are down with their father, and Samuel has to go down there under the pretense. God tells him to tell a little white lie. Tells him to tell him he's going down there to worship. But primarily he's going out to pick a new king. And so they look at each one after the other, and they have the same characteristics of Samuel. They're tall and good looking and strong and with great lead. It looks like they'd be great leaders, but God doesn't pick based on the outward appearance. God looks at the inside of the character of a person. And so after going through several of the sons, Samuel has to ask, are there any more? None of these are the ones that God picks. And the father says, well, David is down there in the field. He's so unimportant, he's so unlikely that we left him there to take care of the sheep while everybody else did the important stuff. So we'll bring him up here. And so he comes up, and God says, this is the one. And Samuel anoints him. The problem is he anoints him king when Saul is still sitting on the throne. So that could be a problem. So there are several moments of interaction with David and his future occupation. He plays music for Saul and becomes friends with Jonathan, Saul's son, but Saul turns on him and ends up chasing him with the army. There's another occasion which you are probably familiar with, is David and Goliath. Apparently there was a challenge. The Hebrew Jewish army was confronted, and they challenged the warrior from the other side. Decided to challenge them so that you can have one warrior against another warrior. And avoid all the conflict, which sounds like a pretty good deal if you get people to do that today. But your champion against our champion, and whoever's better, they're declared the winner. But none of the soldiers for Israel wanted to fight him. Now David had several brothers who were in the army, and so he went to take them food. That's one of the parts of the army, was that your family had to support you with your food and clothing. And so he had to go up to where they were being confronted to take them their food. And they hear the story of Goliath, and David says, God's on our side. We can do this. And so the king says, or the general says, okay, here, you can have a chance, and here's my armor. And puts the armor on David, who's very small, and the armor doesn't fit and wouldn't help very much anyway. And so David says, no, I think I'll use the tools that I know of from shepherding. which is a sling with stones. It kind of lets us know that we can't meet somebody else's expectations. We don't live up to what other people think we ought to look like and what we ought to do. We live within ourselves. God makes us for who we are, and so we can live out of that strength, out of that gift. And so David goes to confront Goliath, and Goliath is a huge man. By some accounts, 9 or 10 feet tall, huge spears, huge shield, big armor, and he laughs at David. He said, "What, did they send a child to fight with me?" And he gets overconfident because he doesn't even put on his helmet, and that will be the fatal flaw because he doesn't take David seriously. And David takes a stone and hits Goliath in the middle of the forehead and kills him and wins the war for them. And then that's the net thing is, the net theme that we pick up from that is how even the little guy, the one who doesn't have all the power, doesn't have all the tools, can beat the big guy. David and Goliath has become a theme throughout the generations. But it's more about what God can do through somebody, not what that person can do through themselves. And so David does conquer Goliath, and he ends up being anointed as king. Now he's going to have trouble as king. He's got Bathsheba, and he's got his own sons who rebel against him. But what he is open to God. And so because of his openness to God and desire to be faithful, he is considered the greatest king in the history of Israel. But God says there'll be another one that come after you, a Messiah who will come from the house of David. And that's what we believe happened with Jesus. But that's when we get to the New Testament, to get to the new story. So that's our message for today about David and how the least likely often gets picked by God and equipped so that everyone knows that God did it. I'll see you next time.